There's this amazing editorial in today's Washington Post or yesterday's Washington Post about how evil Texas is, and it's written by a Texan who says that the GOP here is a death cult. No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, we're not as bad as New York and California, and they've shut everything down. So tell me, where's your science now? See, where's the science? Because I don't understand what's happening, but we're not seeing a difference. But there's also something else about the shutdowns that we're not seeing a difference that I also don't understand, and that is there's no real difference economically in the end now between the states that opened up and the states that didn't, except for unemployment, right?
Yeah, there's no real clear pattern. It's interesting because I'm working on a project for Stu Does America, and we'll do it. We'll talk about it here, too, when I'm done, which is which states actually performed the best and worst through this. Because we all talk about a lot of different things, but like if you look at the whole picture, not just, we love South Dakota, right? Because they showed a lot of freedom, but they had some really rough results at times with the actual virus where, you look at a state like Texas, how did they do? How did Florida do? How did California do? Even though they had, varying government programs and lack of freedom and such. But what was the actual performance when it comes to economy and the actual virus? And so I'm going through this, and one of the things that I found to be really fascinating, and it was against what I believed going in, was when you look at the GDP of these states, how much they locked down doesn't seem to affect the GDP at all. I mean, almost no difference between the states that fully locked down the entire time and states that were open the entire time.
See, that doesn't make sense. Only two things could make sense of that. One, is it that the big businesses that didn't have to lock down were the big businesses? Are they just weighted so much more than the local businesses? Do they do so much more business that it's almost a blip? I don't believe that. The other would be the printing of money.
That's what I think it is, because the government has given away so much money to shield these states against the collapse that they've essentially just run the economy for these blue states. For these states that have really locked down, they've just stepped in and given so much cash that they've floated the economy. Now, when you look at unemployment,
huge difference,
a big difference appears,
right?
Where states that did lock down have much higher unemployment differences than those that did not.
And that's going to be harder to rebound from.
Because these people are out of work. They have to find all new jobs. New businesses need to open.
And small business in every recession, 75% of all job creation comes from the small businessman. Well, in some states, you've completely wiped them out. In New York City, you've wiped the restaurant out. Just wiped it out.
Yeah. So what happened? Because, I mean, GDP doesn't care if you're printing a bunch of money and that's why people are spending, right? They don't care about that. But in the future, they will. So there's only two ways to go forward from here, right? You either continue the printing of money for a very long time, possibly with no end in sight, to maintain these states that had to go through all of this, or
the blue states collapse.
The blue states collapse and the red states do really well. Do you think the Biden administration is going to let that one happen?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Here's the other thing that really concerns me, and that is 10% GDP growth, they're saying, in the first quarter of this year. 10% growth. Now, normally that's great, and I do think it's great. However, where is that GDP growth coming? Where is that money coming from? Is it coming from the average person getting paid and then, growing the economy because they're spending their dollars, or is it because it is coming from the federal government? So you have 10% of GDP growth in the first quarter. On top of that, you are printing 26% more money than we ever have, except in the year 1944. We have never printed dollar to dollar. We've never printed this money except in the year right before the end of the war when we're building ships and nuclear weapons and everything else. That money has got to go someplace. And the reason why we're not having inflation, I contend that we are having inflation. You're having inflation in things like art prices, on Wall Street, on houses, on expensive cars. You're having that inflation already, but it's only at the upper end, because the people who have the money at the upper end and running these giant corporations, and they're like, I'll buy that piece of art for $70 million. They're spending the money, and they're looking for ways to invest the money because they don't necessarily trust the dollar or whatever. So the the mega rich are getting richer. And when it starts to trickle down to where the guy who's the mechanic can go and have some money left over for the movie theater, and he takes his kids out to, well, not a movie theater. He goes out and does something, and he spends that money. Once the average person begins to spend again, you have the threat of real hyperinflation. And, at this thing at M1 this weekend, we were talking about, the things that we could do. At the end, we went over, so where did America go wrong? And did we drift, or was it plotted? And it was a little bit of both. A lot of it, though, is just the average drift, that people just stop paying attention, and you just forget about certain things that are really, really important. And we started to drift. So the first thing you need to do is learn what we really are all about. Where did America go wrong, and where did America go right? And we're conservative, which means we conserve the good things while we work with somebody who is into progress. I hate to use the word progressive, but a conservative that is not a 20th century progressive, but progressive on new ideas, new technologies. That's the perfect combination. We don't throw everything away for something new. We conserve the things that made us who we are, and we keep the important things that have always worked. And you have to know what those things are. But also prepare for impact, because I don't know when it's going to happen, but we're in it now. We are in it now. And if you plan on standing, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to stand. Stu and I were talking about, solar panels yesterday. And if you don't have solar panels on your house in the future, you're going to get taxed for it. You're going to get points taken off. You won't maybe be able to sell your house or buy a house unless you agree to install solar energy on top of the roof. It's going to change. And if you say, I'm not going to do the social justice thing, I won't participate in all of this. Well, you're going to have a harder and harder time having access to almost everything.